Good morning, folks. I'm Suzanne McAllister, and I am here with Eunice Schatz, who is author, elder, wise woman. And I met Eunice, probably close to 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, when I consulted with her and her husband at an organization that they started called Life Work Direction. And anyway, I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. And Life Work Direction continues. Eunice and Don handed it off to another couple probably 5 or 10 years ago. Anyway, it is March of 2025, and Eunice, you sent me some really compelling notes a few days ago, and I can start asking questions based on that. Or if there's something more pressing on your mind right now, I'd like to go with where you are in the moment. And if you want to go back to the notes, I am prepared to do that. So that's up to you.
I'm just taking in what it means to see you, these 30 years later.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We've both changed a bit. I think yeah.
Thank God.
Oh. Anyway, I love the first sentence in the note that you sent me was at 95, comma, one looks back, not ahead. And first of all, I loved the simplicity of that sentence. It was spare, Hemingway-esque, I would say. And it made sense to me, but do you want to say something about that?
I think it relates primarily to the situation I am in. I think if I were like a married woman with children and family, that, I would still be attended to by them and still locked into that system. But I'm much more alone. And so, what is it that occupies me?
Do you want to say you wrote about that quite beautifully? Would you like to say something about what engages you? And actually, before you do that, I'm aware that I'm particularly interested in talking to you the way we have been over the past year and a half, maybe 2 years now, doing these recorded conversations. I also am without children. I do have quite a large extended family, so I'm different from you in that. But I'm quite aware that when one ages and maybe needs help, just to do ordinary functions, we tend to rely on family because our friends are probably in the same age group and perhaps not able to help us the way we need to be helped. So I'm always interested in how you are coping with the situation you're in. And if it's okay, if somebody is viewing this for the first time and don't know you, you suffered a stroke about 2.5 years ago and are disabled, and that's the word you use, where you are reliant on other people to do basic functions. Am I correct in that?
I would just change your grammar a little bit and say I was awestruck.
I like that. Okay. Say more about that.
It's like Mary Oliver's line in her poem when she's remembering what a rich life she had and put into poetry. And she says, I was like a bride married to amazement.
Huh.
Wouldn't you like to be that?
Ooh.
Amazing grace.
Yes.
I
Yes.
am amazed. I
Hmm.
thought I would die. Don died, and we were both not in good shape. And I thought, oh, obviously I'm going to die. So I was surprised that I didn't die.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. Well, so you're changing the word stroke to
Awestruck.
awestruck, which right in itself, in psychology, and I'm a retired psychology, we're often reframing things, and that's what you just did. You reframed what most of us think about as a stroke as something disabling and something that none of us want to something awestruck, which when we think about being awestruck, it's usually a positive thing. So right there, that shift is one of the things that you do that I think puts you in a category, which I learned from for sure. And selfishly, Eunice, I am doing these recordings, even if nobody else ever listened to them or watched them, I get so much from them because I do still look ahead. You were talking about looking back and not ahead. And I look ahead and ask myself, how well would I do if I were in the circumstance that you find yourself in? So I learn from you. And I know it hasn't all been easy. And that's one of the things that you wrote about. You said, first, I was concentrated on my present physical situation, which felt like a prison. I had no control for the first time in my adult life. Then I latched onto the idea that this incarceration might become a place of chosen quiet, like a monastery. Most recently, the idea of it becoming a wilderness with its evocation as a place of testing, where I needed to grow into a hardier self that felt a sense of meaning spiritually.
Yeah, and I might surprise you or astound you or take it off track in that right now it feels like a pregnancy, and that maybe needs some explication. And it has to do with why it came to me is because last Sunday, I listened to a church service, and it was the what was being remembered was the Annunciation, and I don't know. I think you have some background to understand. That means when Mary was approached by an angel and told that she would be pregnant with God
Yes.
coming as a Messiah. And so, I'm going to skip a moment back to connect in a different way because awe, amazement, awe. You use the word awe, and right away I read a book by Dashner Keltner, and the title was Awe,
Hmm.
and he wrote another very significant book called The Rebirthing
Okay.
of God. And it's taking a whole different look on our faith.
Hmm.
And you would, among all people I know, would welcome that because you had to look at that differently in your own experience.
Hmm.
And but that was true for me as well. So what is my birthing? And it helped me to think, well, 9 months, I'm going to see how these next 9 months go. It might be the end of my life, and it might be just a pause.
Mm-hmm. And how has thinking about it in terms of pregnancy changed how you're um, experiencing things from moment to moment, day to day?
It takes me right back to the most significant, surprisingly, the most significant moment in my young life. At the age of 16, why in the world did I feel I needed to choose a life verse? That seemed to be something that people did. Well, mine was extremely significant. I realize now.
When what was your life verse?
It was talking about what it was talking first about Moses, how he was the one person who was able to see God face to face. And then it goes on. The verse says, we all, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are changed into his likeness from one degree of glory to another. This is by the Spirit. The Spirit, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. I'm confined. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, and I'll be changed. And looking in a mirror, what do you see in a mirror? Yourself.
Hmm.
And that happened during my therapy at the age of 37. I came home one day and I lay down on the bed, and something just came into me that I can't explain. But what came out of my mouth was, I'm glad I'm a girl.
Hmm.
And I had lived my whole life as, as a powerful woman in a women's organization that far. And I went into the bathroom to check the mirror. And I looked at my face and I didn't recognize it.
Hmm.
It was, and I remember going next Sunday, I went to church and the usher came toward me as I came up the steps to the church and he says, you're beautiful. That was new. I
Okay.
walked on into the sanctuary. And it was two men, came toward me and said, you're beautiful.
Hmm.
And there's more to that story that I don't choose to include, but my whole consciousness changed.
And
And
it's
I was ready for what had for me next, which was, of course, my marriage.
yes. And before that experience, you had not been focusing on your feminine side. Is that fair?
I didn't know there was a feminine side. I didn't know that women. I read Marilyn French's book, The Women's Room. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all about the women's movement. I thought, why is she writing that? I don't feel that I'm put down or anything. I was in a women's organization. I was doing things that most women didn't do, and had a position among men actually that was equal. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that I had to learn the women's movement in order to feel myself. I felt it.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, I'm different from others. I didn't marry and have babies, which would have locked me in, because the women that came to counsel in my camps, I was the director of camps, they were so glad to be at camp away from their home
Right.
because they could just be themselves like a young girl again.
And then you did marry, obviously, and had a long, happy marriage.
Yes, it was miraculous. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said he passed me by one day in the hall. He worked in the same building I did at the University of Chicago. He says, there's something special about you. I'd like to know what it is. And I thought, what a line. He never followed up on that, though. And a little later, I needed help one day, and I thought, well, Don would help. And so I opened the door, and I opened the door right into his face. He was right there ready to come into the building. And he says, what's wrong? He read me like, he knew me already. And we went out and ate breakfast and everything. And he says, there's something here,
Mm.
you know. And we never wavered from that.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
We just knew.
Mm. Yeah.
I think I'm talking about a kind of sense of experience that comes from a different place. And I want to be sure, because I'm in a very confined situation here, the prison I saw it as, and then maybe a monastery and then a wilderness. But, there's a freedom inside.
Mm. It reminds me of, I think his name was Sharansky, who was a Russian dissident. I'm going back probably 30 years, who was put into solitary confinement. This is a vague memory, but it was something like 9 years. And I remember reading or listening to him being questioned about how did he survive and not go crazy. And basically was saying something similar to what you're saying, or Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, John McCain, 5.5 years in prison where he was tortured, given an opportunity to leave, but he said, I'm not leaving my men. So people who have had to withstand, and I'm not making comparisons between all of them and you, other than you're in a situation where you could have become quite depressed, frustrated, angry, and maybe you've gone through some of that. But what I'm hearing you say now is that through your reading and listening, and I think your lifetime of spiritual practice are recognizing that the freedom comes from within, not from outside.
Yes, profound. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that laughter and tears come from the same place in the amygdala, and both come. And I was on the verge of saying a moment ago that I wanted you and others to know that there was a moment a few mornings ago that I woke up, and what came out of my mouth was, I'm happy. I didn't think it and then speak it.
Wow.
It emerged. I can't explain it any other way.
Wow.
It was true. It's like when you look into the mirror speaks the truth.
Yeah.
So that image of my childhood, the mirror, it shows me who I am sometimes, and I ask forgiveness. I'm no prize, but it also mirrors what God is trying to develop within me. And even, when I use the word develop, where it takes me is I don't think about death and dying. I mean, God knows that my bones, are not worth very much now. I mean, that's not me. I inhabit that, but yeah, so I use the term I inhabit eternity. And I've started now. I'm inhabiting it now. So make the best of it.
Wow.
I'm not waiting for some magical change. No, I need to be changed daily.
Well, if what I'm interpreting, and it's impossible to know exactly what it feels like to be in another person's body, but that you are living in the present.
That's a beautiful way of saying it, because the word present and presence are simultaneously powerful realizations that I can't explain or interpret. We're so much more than just skin and bones. And our name and our title and our accomplishments and everything.
Yeah. Well, these are the kinds of things, Eunice, that I find comforting, inspiring, educational, that, like I said, thinking about what might be in store for me, I will be able to draw upon what you have been sharing over the last 1.5, 2 years, as we've been talking about how you have learned to, I don't like the word cope because I think you've done more than cope.
Cooperate with the
That's
energy
good.
of the spirit. Yeah.
That's good.
The words are always fooling us. We say cope, but it's cooperate. Yeah.
I like that. Do you know what word came to my mind was that you're exploiting your situation to your
Exploring and exploiting it. Yeah. Using it up. It's delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, which again, for me is it provides something of a roadmap. I may never be in your exact situation, but the body does start to deteriorate as we get older, no matter how healthy we are. Things change. And it could be your hearing, your sight, your legs, organs, but the body does start to change as we get older. And so I think about, well, what might that be like for me? And you have given me, I've said roadmap or sense of hope or a way of approaching things that I might not be too happy about. Like you said, you felt for the first time you did not have control. And I think many of us have the illusion that we have control. I certainly have that illusion. And to some extent, I do have control. But there are many things that occur over which we have no control. And certainly the situation you're in, you don't have control over certain functions, but what you've managed to do is delve, educate, use the word listen in the notes that you sent me, that's one of the things that you're learning to do in your stillness and contemplation.
Yeah, and right away when you're talking, I thought of my eyes, and putting on your glasses or taking them off. And, I took mine off because what I needed to see was not what, vision is for most of us.
Yeah.
I think maybe I was helped by that my father was blind from birth, legally blind. the doctor was drunk and dropped a instrument in his eye, put out half his sight on his left eye.
Mm,
I grew up with a man who was blind, legally blind,
mhm,
and he was a wonderful exhibit to me of he was I was so loved by him.
mm, mm. So there's some juxtaposition with his being blind and you being loved by him.
Yeah, it's his being blind. He turned into a change of vocation
Mhm.
and a change of his attitude toward his condition. Yeah.
So you had somebody who modeled that for you, just as you're modeling something for me and for the people who will be listening to this.
Yeah, unconsciously. Yeah.
Hey, that's okay. Anyway, is there anything else that you want to add before we finish today?
No, I can't. I really rely on your prompts.
Well, I'll tell you what stays with me was the comment you made that you woke up the other morning and it wasn't that you thought it and said it, but it just came out of your mouth. I'm happy. And I think,
Yeah, we are inhabited by something so powerful.
yeah,
And when we access it, we're totally surprised. Is not even a big enough word.
yes. I often think, and you brought Mary Oliver up, that poets have a gift of accessing what happened to you the other morning. I'm happy it just came out. And all of us probably have moments that we can point to where we realize something erupts, comes out that was not planned and not thought about, but just emerged.
Yeah, God is not out there, He's within,
Yes.
and we forget that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making time. Thank you for how you're living your life and sharing it.
Yeah, and you enable, that's a very important element that knits us in an unusual way.
Yes.
It's,
We,
the tapestry, we're told that we were knit in the womb by God, and now the tapestry is occurring and appearing for both of us, much more intricate than we imagined.
I was just going to say, I don't think we would have predicted this,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
love.
Amen. Yeah. You're a
Amen is right.
blessing. You're a blessing.
It it goes full circle. It just goes around. Yes. Thank you.
Merci.